Welcome to Virtual Realms. I'm Ranger 1. This video is going to be a little different. It started out as one thing, a simple video with live commentary doing some breeding for mutations, pachycephalosauruses, but it kind of evolved into something completely different. Well, this is how the video was supposed to go. Okay, it's time for round number 3. Let's see what we have here. I ended up not keeping that purple one. If it was a purple mutation, it wasn't distinct enough that I wanted to keep it. It looked an awful lot like a standard color of purple. Oh, there's another blue and a yellow body. Oh, I'm gonna get rid of that. And a light blue. Red spikes. Yellow spikes. Oh, we have done well. Okay. Orange spikes? Okay, I'm gonna claim these guys and take them over and let them grow a little bit. Let's just keep going. You've seen what we've got here. Look at that guy. That light blue and the dark blue we've already got for the back plates will look really, really good. The red spikes will look awesome. Okay. Well, everything was going nicely, but while I was waiting for more eggs to be produced to continue my breeding activities, I kept making scouting runs to my 2 habitats that I have set up, and well, certain things became very apparent to me that changed the course of this video. The Emerald Lake habitat is the more dangerous of the 2 by far, and large predators like Spinos and T-Rexes are not unusual. They spawn in the surrounding areas and wander right in, and that's okay. The first thing I discovered was actually something very positive. My defenses as far as the guardian turtles that I've put in place and the Karuku that roam the lake, well, and the anglers that swim in the lake, those defenses were holding pretty well. Here's an example. This big old T-Rex wandered in from the east, from the direction of Viking Bay. And I was kind of concerned, but I decided I would just sit back and watch and see what happened. I knew I was going to take some losses, but frankly, these habitats need to have some attrition. Otherwise, they'd be overpopulated with my creatures. My creatures, meaning my tames and their offspring, the ones that are born in the wilderness and run around as unclaimed. That's an important distinction to remember, and I'll show you why a little bit later in this video. Suffice to say, right now, I was a little concerned. The T-Rex was wandering in closer and closer to the center of the habitat on the northern shore, where most of my defenseless little jerboas are. And I was thinking I might have to intervene. None of my turtles were near at hand. But the Karuku in the area became attracted first and moved in to deal with this level 90 T-Rex. The battle was not going well at first, and they took heavy losses. But then something interesting happened. This little badass entered the fray. He's one of my red Karuku, and he caught the T-Rex in the shallows and started running rings around him. An angler's trying to help him out. It doesn't inflict a whole lot of damage there at the shoreline. But this Karuku kept that T-Rex tied up and inflicting steady damage on him, taking an occasional hit in return for several minutes. He was actually inflicting a pretty fair amount of damage, but eventually he was going to die. But he held out long enough to drive the Rex actually across the lake as their battle raged on, and draw the attention of the rest of the creatures at that end of the habitat. Once that happened, the Rex was doomed. He was just simply overwhelmed. Guardian turtles tanking his damage, and we still took the occasional loss here and there, as is to be expected, but he had damage coming in from above, from below, in the water, on the rock, on the shoreline, from all directions, and eventually the Rex just simply collapsed. So my little habitat was functioning. It could defend itself from even large external threats wandering in from adjacent areas. But its vulnerable spot wasn't the exterior, it was the interior, where all of my jerboas tend to hang out and breed. They're game, plucky little animals that try, but, well, they're just not built for combat. On that same trip while I was up there, a Dilo spawned in, right in the middle of jerboa territory. Had it been a low-level one, they could probably have overwhelmed it and defended themselves, but this was a level 145 Dilo, and, well, he kept drawing them out, small groups of jerboa. He'd run from them for a while and draw them to him, isolate them from the rest of the animals, and then he'd pick them off. And they just couldn't generate enough damage to take down a Dilo that high a level. And a Dilo is not really a significant threat, so that shows you just how vulnerable the jerboa population is. The problem with my guardian turtles in Kuruku is they tend to hang out in the lake, and that's fine for threats that are coming at them from that direction, but anything that spawns in behind my borders, so to speak, in and amongst the jerboa, well, that's bad news. I've lost most of this colony a couple of different times now, to threats that, frankly, weren't that significant. Needless to say, this hardened my resolve to bring those packies up here and let them roam free, to deal with small threats just like this. The colony on Long Beach had its own problems with predation, and, well, while I was observing them a little bit later on, a couple of things became apparent, actually. No, the megalodons that spawn and swarm offshore are not the problem for the jerboa colony there. They manage to pretty much steer clear of any deep water, although they will occasionally swim across the shallows. But the megalodons aren't the issue out on the coast. Now, out here, the main issue is, well, an occasional Dilo will spawn, which is its own little ball of mess, but these ichthyornis, they like to prey on small creatures, and that, unfortunately, includes jerboa. They will circle and attack relentlessly, both my tames and the unclaimed, snatch them up into the air, and repeatedly hit them while circling. Now, if my jerboa manage to turn around while in the ichthyornis's grip and inflict a hit on the ichthyornis, well, the ichthy will drop them. If the jerboa is lucky, the ichthy will pick a different target, but if not, well, eventually the ichthy will kill it and consume it, and then move on to the next jerboa. My packies weren't going to be much help out here, so I was going to have to come up with something else that was going to help defend the jerboa in this area. And that's a problem I can deal with. Unfortunately, while I was observing this, I realized I was eventually going to have to deal with an even bigger problem. You see, since this ichthyornis and other predators will prey on my tames and the unclaimed alike, that can lead to an even worse problem. What you're about to witness is jerboa warfare. You see, my tames will defend each other, and the unclaimed jerboas will defend themselves and each other. But the two groups don't play nicely together in a close combat situation like this, where both groups have been aggroed. Eventually, one tame jerboa is going to hit an unclaimed one or vice versa, and they're going to start fighting. And then we end up with a situation like this, which is hilarious, but horrifying all at the same time, where these jerboa groups are fighting each other to the death. I quickly realized after watching this that the wisest course of action would be to come up with a way where my tamed creatures could generate their unclaimed offspring, but needed to be kept separate, and preferably be able to do all that without my direct interference most of the time. This is the baby blender. It's a simple glass box with partial walls going around the outside supported on pillars. Its purpose is to keep one male in the center of those pillars and as many females as I need, up to probably 4, maybe more depending on the breed, and hold them in place so that breeding takes place without any interruptions. I can put some of my mutations in there and get a nice variety of colors, all of them mutated, and have wild babies born, well, they're not wild, they're unclaimed, born, and be able to freely leave the box and wander on their own recognizance out the opening at the bottom. That way I can use this to populate an entire area with just a few animals that are kept safe in this box. I could put a turret on top of it too if I wanted to. Well, I really kind of need to watch that. I don't want them to kill the babies, but I think it can be done depending on the turret. Maybe a Tek turret would do it. I can change this design depending on the breed of dino that I want to breed. I can make it bigger. I can't really make it smaller than that, but that should work for just about everything except the smallest creatures. Maybe compies would slip underneath that. Jerboas, I have found, will stop. Adult jerboas will stop at that glass half wall and not go any further on their own volition. But the babies will. This was going to be my solution to the problem of breeding my colorful mutant children in the wild while keeping the two populations separate, tames and unclaimed, and keeping my tames safe. But then I made two discoveries that changed all that. I discovered something about the ingenious design of the Ragnarok map, and about the physics of some of the tech items in-game that provided me with a solution that was much, much more efficient than this simple box. The first one was that one of the landmark features of the Emerald Lake Preserve, that big tall tree out there, it's very distinctive. It has a snap point on it for a platform. I hadn't even realized that some terrain features, and I guess trees, here in Ragnarok, you can slap a platform on quite easily. It's already made for it to happen. So I put a Platforms Plus tech platform up, which comes with its own built-in shield, which doesn't require a power supply. Incredibly handy. I thought this is a great place for a base, and I started building some stuff there. I thought, you know, I can start doing some breeding here on this platform, and it'll be protected from Rexes and Spinos and that sort of thing. And that's when I made my second startling discovery. You see, this shield doesn't react well to unclaimed babies being born inside it. And it reacts by ejecting them with a fair amount of force through the nearest force field wall. The babies are completely unharmed, they're just ejected. And thus is born the perfect distribution system for for unclaimed babies here in the Emerald Lake habitat. I'll show you what I mean. I originally tested this successfully, I might add, by rounding up all my jerboa tames that were in the area around the Emerald Lake habitat and putting them in a container up here on the platform. But since jerboa babies are so tiny, it's really kind of hard to see what's actually happening here. They just kind of seem to disappear if you're not looking very closely. So I brought up some parasaur eggs to show you instead. This one's just about to hatch. There we go, and there she goes. Expelled from the platform through the shield to land safely on the lake shore below. They always go out the side of the shield that's closest to them, so you can kind of aim it like a cannon. And there she is, just fine. I think I'm going to name this system the Baby Boomer, because it booms those babies right out in the middle of, well, wherever you want them to be. This is the perfect solution for what I want to do, which is to keep my tames separate, but populate an area with the creatures that I want in that area. And you don't have their names floating overhead all the time unless you get really, really close. And, well, perhaps it's just me, but I find the act of slinging these babies across the preserve to be, frankly, hilarious. Oh, and in case you're curious, I've tested. This does work with this Platform and Platforms Plus. It works with S Plus Shield generators, and it also works with vanilla generators as well. So you can do this whether you're using mods or not. So yeah, this video kind of went in a completely different direction from what I originally had in mind. I hope that's not a problem. Anyway, this is going to make a big change in the way I handle these habitats that I want to set up around Ragnarok here and there. And don't worry, I will show you how the Pachycephalosaurus breeding turned out. I actually ended up with oh look, triplets. Nice. Sorry. I actually ended up with a really nice assortment of mutations, and we'll be distributing them up here. Oh, and there's another one. We'll be distributing them up here at the Emerald Lake Habitat shortly. I'm going to wrap it up for now. I'll try and get that follow-up video done as soon as I can. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Give it a like and perhaps share it with all your closest friends. And until I see you again, good hunting. Oh, hell.